Hey guys, tonight we are diving headfirst into the shadows, into the unsettling and often terrifying world of Japanese ghost stories and urban legends, all while the soothing, or perhaps not so soothing, sound of rain patters down around us. Imagine it, you're tucked away, maybe in an old ryokan, a traditional Japanese inn. The paper shoji screens are drawn, but they seem to breathe with the wind, casting long, dancing shadows from a single, flickering lantern in the corner. Rain streaks down the windows, blurring the world outside into a watercolor wash of dark blues and grays. Every gust of wind carries with it whispers from the ancient cedar trees, and perhaps something more. You hear the drip, drip, drip from the eaves, a relentless rhythm that seems to count down to. Well, let's just say you probably won't be checking your social media for a while after this. In fact, you might find the idea of looking at any reflective surface a bit daunting for the next few hours. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Your support, even a simple click, truly helps keep these tales alive in the digital ether. And while you're at it, why not drop a comment below with your location and what time it is where you are? It's always fascinating to see how far these stories travel, a little global campfire of sorts. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The rain outside isn't just a backdrop, is it? It's a presence. It feels like a curtain, separating you from the mundane, everyday world and drawing you into a space where the veil between realities is thin, almost translucent. You can hear it drumming on the roof, a steady, insistent beat like ancient taiko drums in a forgotten ceremony. Each drop seems to whisper a secret, a fragment of story lost to time. You pull your blanket a little closer, the fabric a flimsy shield against the encroaching chill that has nothing to do with the actual temperature of the room. Japan, as you know, has a rich and deeply ingrained history of an appreciation for the supernatural. It's not just about jump scares and gory monsters. It's a nuanced tapestry woven with threads of Shinto animism, Buddhist philosophy, and centuries of folklore. Shinto, for instance, the indigenous faith of Japan, populates the world with kami, spirits that inhabit everything from majestic mountains and ancient trees to, yes, even particularly interesting rocks. This inherent belief that the spiritual world is not separate from our own, but interwoven with it, creates a fertile ground for tales of encounters with the other side. It's a worldview where a sudden cold spot in a room or an unexplained noise isn't just your house settling. It's a potential brush with something else. Think about the classic Japanese ghost, the eerie, often depicted as pale figures, typically women with long, dark, disheveled hair, dressed in a white burial kimono, the sharajuku. They are beings trapped between worlds, usually by some powerful emotion experienced in life: sorrow, jealousy, a desire for vengeance, or even profound, unresolved love. They are not just random spooks. They are echoes of human suffering. Historians still argue whether the detailed codification of Yurei imagery, particularly during the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, was a form of societal control, reinforcing moral codes through cautionary tales, or simply an artistic flourishing in a time of relative peace and burgeoning popular culture. It's a bit like wondering if slasher films are purely for entertainment or a weird commentary on suburban anxieties. Probably a bit of both, if we're honest. During that very Edo period, a popular pastime emerged known as Hyakumonogatory Kaidankai, which literally translates to a gathering of 100 supernatural tales. Imagine a group of people huddled in a room, 100 candles lit. One by one, they would tell a ghost story, and after each tale, a candle would be extinguished, plunging the room further and further into darkness. The belief was that as the final candle was snuffed out, with the room in complete blackness, a real supernatural event might occur, or a spirit might be summoned. Talk about setting the mood. It's a far cry from telling spooky stories around a campfire with marshmallows. though equally effective at making you jump at every creak of a floorboard. You can almost feel that oppressive darkness now, can't you? The scent of burnt-out wicks, the heightened sense of hearing, every breath in the room amplified. And it's not just the big, dramatic ghosts. The Japanese spiritual landscape is teeming with yokai, a vast category of supernatural monsters, spirits, and demons. Some are mischievous, some are helpful, and some are, well, let's just say you wouldn't want to meet them on a dark, rainy night in a remote alley. There's even a rather charmingly named yokai called Amifurikoso, a little boy spirit who is said to run around playing in the rain, often depicted carrying a paper lantern and wearing a wide-brimmed hat. He's generally harmless, more of a nuisance if anything, perhaps responsible for that unexpected puddle you step in. Not all encounters are terrifying, but even the benign ones remind you that you're sharing your world with more than just other humans. It's like knowing your house has mice. They might not be plotting your demise, but their unseen presence is still a bit unsettling, isn't it? Especially if one scampers over your foot in the dark. You wouldn't invite an Amifurikoso in for tea, I reckon, even if he promised to leave his muddy boots at the door. The rain seems to be picking up a little, doesn't it? That gentle patter is becoming more insistent, a rhythmic drumming that syncs with your own slightly quickening pulse. You shift, trying to find a more comfortable position, but there's a prickle on your skin, that feeling of being watched, even though you know you're alone. Or are you? The very air in Japan can feel ancient, saturated with stories. Every gnarled tree, every moss-covered stone in an old temple garden, every creaking floorboard in a traditional house seems to hold a memory, a whisper of the past. And tonight, with the rain as our companion, we're going to listen to some of those whispers. You find yourself drifting, not quite asleep, but suspended in that liminal space where the sound of the storm outside bleed into the landscape of your mind. The rain continues its steady percussion, a relentless, soothing, yet somehow ominous soundtrack. It's in this state, this gentle loosening of your grip on the concrete, that the first distinct figure begins to coalesce from the shadows and the whispers. She is the quintessential image of a Japanese ghost, the Eerie. Imagine a figure emerging, not with a sudden shock, but slowly, as if materializing from the mist that clings to a damp graveyard. Her form is indistinct at first, a smudge against the deeper darkness, but as your eyes, or perhaps your mind's eye, strain to see, details emerge. She is draped in the stark white of a shireshakuku, a traditional burial kimono. It's slightly askew, perhaps, stained with grave dirt or the dampness of the earth. Her feet, if she has them, are rarely visible. Eerie are often depicted as hovering, legless, a visual shorthand for their detachment from the world of the living. Historians note that this particular depiction of legless ghosts became prominent in art and theater during the Edo period, a stylistic choice that emphasized their ethereal, otherworldly nature. Before that, ghosts in Japanese folklore were often depicted with feet, just like everybody else, which is somehow less creepy, isn't it? Like, oh hi, spectral being, nice shoes. Her most striking feature, though, is her hair. It's long, impossibly long, and black as a starless night. It's not styled or neat, but rather hangs lank and disheveled, often partially obscuring her face. This isn't just a fashion statement. Traditionally, Japanese women grew their hair long, and it was let down for burial. So, her flowing locks are another signifier of her status as one of the deceased. You can almost feel the damp chill emanating from her presence, a cold that seeps into your bones, far more penetrating than any draft from the window. She doesn't rush or scream. The Eerie is often a creature of sorrow, of deep, abiding sadness. You might hear a faint sound, a soft weeping, or a mournful sigh carried on the wind, barely distinguishable from the rustle of leaves or the creak of the house. Her movements are slow, deliberate, sometimes almost balletic in their tragic grace. Her face, when you glimpse it through the curtain of her hair, is pale, unnaturally so, like polished bone or the belly of a fish. Her eyes might be downcast, lost in some eternal grief, or they might fix upon you with an intensity that freezes your blood. What does she want? That's the crucial question. Unlike some Western ghosts who might just be hanging around because they forgot where they left their spectral car keys, the eerie is almost always tied to the world of the living by a powerful, unresolved issue. Perhaps she was a victim of betrayal, murdered by a faithless lover or a cruel master. Maybe she died in childbirth, her spirit lingering out of concern for her child. Or perhaps she carries a profound regret, a task left undone, a message undelivered. Historians still argue whether the prevalence of female Yurei in Japanese folklore reflects underlying societal misogyny and the powerlessness of women in certain historical periods, or if it speaks to a belief that the emotional depth and perceived sensitivity of women made their spirits more likely to become tethered to this world. It's a complex thought, isn't it? That societal constraints could follow you even into the afterlife. One quirky, or perhaps just deeply practical, tidbit from Japanese folklore concerned how to potentially appease or deal with a Yurei. Sometimes fulfilling the ghost's purpose, righting the wrong that was done to them, delivering their message, or caring for what they left behind can allow them to move on. It's like the ultimate posthumous to-do list. Imagine the pressure. Okay, spectral lady, so you need me to find your long-lost locket and tell your third cousin twice removed that he really shouldn't have cheated at that game of Go? Right then, it's certainly more involved than just calling an exorcist. You sense her drawing closer, or perhaps the space between you simply dissolving. The air grows heavy, thick with unspoken sorrow. There's no overt threat, not yet, but the sheer weight of her grief is overwhelming. It's a palpable thing, an invisible pressure against her chest. You might feel an inexplicable urge to weep yourself, a sympathetic resonance with her pain. This is a common theme. The emotions of the Yurei are contagious, seeping into the living like a psychic chill. She might not speak in words you understand. Her communication could be through images flashed into your mind, a sudden, overwhelming feeling of despair, or a single chilling whisper that seems to originate from inside your own head. Sometimes the only sound is that soft, incessant weeping. You realize that her presence isn't about scaring you, not primarily. It's about her need, her unresolved agony. She is a wound in the fabric of reality, and her pain bleeds out, touching anyone who comes near. You might notice her hands, often pale and delicate, sometimes held out in a pleading gesture, or they might be clenched, hinting at the anger beneath the sorrow. The details are important because they tell her story. Is there a faint red mark on her neck? A look of profound betrayal in her eyes? Each element is a clue to the tragedy that binds her here. The rain outside seems to mirror her weeping, each drop a tear shed for a life cut short, for justice denied, for love lost. You feel an immense pity, but also a profound unease. How do you help someone who is no longer truly alive? How do you comfort a sorrow that has festered for decades, perhaps centuries? The answer, you suspect, is not simple, and the attempt itself might be fraught with peril. Because while she may seem mournful and passive now, the line between sorrow and rage, especially for a spirit, can be terrifyingly thin. That lingering sadness, if provoked, can curdle into something far more dangerous. The mournful presence of the Yurei begins to shift, or perhaps a new, altogether more potent energy asserts itself in the rain-soaked darkness of your mind. The sorrow you felt emanating from the pale lady, while unsettling, had a melancholic edge. This new feeling, however, is sharp, acidic, and utterly chilling. You're now brushing against the domain of the onryo, the vengeful spirit, and this is a different kind of terror altogether. If the Yurei is a sigh of sadness, the onryo is a scream of rage. These are spirits consumed by a burning desire for revenge, often born from acts of extreme cruelty, betrayal, or injustice suffered in life. Think of the most intense anger you've ever felt. Multiply it by an eternity of festering resentment, and you're only just beginning to scratch the surface of an Onra fury. Their earthly ties aren't just unresolved tasks. They are raw, gaping wounds inflicted by others, and their spectral existence is dedicated to making the perpetrators, and sometimes anyone unfortunate enough to cross their path, pay dearly. The atmosphere in your imagined room changes. The air, which was heavy with sorrow, now crackles with an unseen malevolence. The rain against the window sounds less like weeping and more like angry claws scratching to get in. You might not see the Onryo as clearly at first as you did the Yuria. They are often masters of psychological torment before they even deign to make a full appearance. You might experience a creeping sense of dread, suffocating paranoia. Objects might move on their own, not in a playful poltergeist way, but with a deliberate, menacing intent. A door might slam shut, trapping you. A cherished possession might shatter. These are the early warning signs, the Onryo flexing its spectral muscles. When they do manifest, the imagery can be terrifying. While they share some visual similarities with Yurii, the pale skin, the long dark hair, the white kimono, the Onryo's appearance is often distorted by their rage. Their eyes might be wide and bloodshot, burning with an unholy light. Their features might be contorted into a permanent snarl of hatred. One of the most famous Onryo in Japanese folklore, Oiwa-san from the story Yatsuya Kaiden, is often depicted with a disfigured face, a testament to the horrors she endured. It's said that her image was so terrifying that kabuki theaters performing her story had to enact special purification rituals to avoid real-life misfortune befalling the cast and crew. Talk about method acting taking a dark turn. Imagine if playing Hamlet meant you might actually see your dad's ghost telling you to avenge him. But, for real. The mainstream historical fact here is that tales of Onryo were incredibly popular during the Edo period, particularly in kabuki theater and ukiyo-e woodblock prints. These stories served as both thrilling entertainment and moral parables, warning against cruelty and injustice, suggesting that such actions could have dire, supernatural consequences. It was a kind of societal pressure valve, perhaps, a way to acknowledge the darker aspects of human nature and the desire for retribution, even if it had to be outsourced to the spirit world. The curse of an Onryo is not a simple haunting. It can be a creeping, insidious thing, destroying lives, families, even entire bloodlines. Misfortune will plague their targets: illness, accidents, financial ruin, madness. The Onryo doesn't just want to scare you. It wants to dismantle your life, piece by agonizing piece. Historians still argue whether the belief in powerful curses, like those of Onryo, provided a framework for understanding inexplicable calamities in pre-modern Japan, attributing them to supernatural vengeance rather than random chance or unknown natural causes. It's easier to blame a ghost for your terrible luck than to accept that sometimes bad things just happen, isn't it? Oh, the crops failed again. Definitely that angry spirit we didn't appease, not my questionable farming techniques. A quirky tidbit related to appeasing such spirits involved the concept of Goryo Shinko, or the faith in vengeful spirits of high-ranking individuals who died wrongful deaths. Sometimes, to pacify these powerful Onryo, shrines were erected in their honor, effectively deifying them. The most famous example is Sugawara no Michizane, a Heian period scholar and statesman who was exiled due to political intrigue and died in despair. After his death, Kyoto was plagued by disasters, which were attributed to his angry spirit. To appease him, he was posthumously pardoned, promoted, and eventually enshrined as Tenjin, the Shinto deity of scholarship. So if you're powerful enough in life, even your vengeful ghost can get a promotion in a fancy temple. Not a bad retirement plan, all things considered. You feel a prickling sensation on your skin, the hair on your arms standing on end. The silence in the room, punctuated only by the drumming rain, feels charged. like the air before a lightning strike. An Onryo's presence is an active assault. You might hear disembodied voices, not sorrowful whispers, but hisses, threats, or mocking laughter. You might see fleeting glimpses of movement in your peripheral vision, things that vanish when you try to look directly at them. The temperature can plummet suddenly, leaving you shivering, where you might feel a suffocating heat like the breath of a furnace. The Onryo is a relentless hunter. They are driven by a singular, all-consuming purpose, and they have eternity to achieve it. Unlike the eerie who might be freed if their regret is addressed, an Onryo's thirst for vengeance is often insatiable. Appeasement is difficult, sometimes impossible. Their rage has become their entire identity. You realize, with a cold knot of dread in your stomach, that if you were the target of such a spirit, there would be few places to hide. Their influence can stretch far beyond the initial sight of their suffering or death. They can become an inescapable shadow. The rain seems to lash against the imaginary shoji screens now, each drop a tiny fist pounding for entry. You can almost picture those screens tearing, revealing not the storm outside, but a pair of burning eyes fixed on you with an ancient, undying hatred. The feeling is so intense, so personal. It's as if the spirit knows your deepest fears and is preparing to exploit every single one of them. This isn't just a story anymore. It's an intrusion. The suffocating rage of the Onryo begins to recede, not entirely, but enough for you to take a shaky breath. The focus shifts, moving from the intensely personal hauntings of wronged individuals to the broader, wilder spaces where other kinds of entities dwell. You feel yourself drawn away from the claustrophobic confines of a cursed room and into the deep, rain-lashed forests of Japan, ancient woodlands where the trees are impossibly tall and their leaves whisper secrets older than humankind. This is the realm of many yokai, and among the most prominent and unsettling are the Tengu. As you imagine yourself stepping into this forest, the rain doesn't just fall. It filters down in a million tiny streams through the dense canopy, making the air thick with the scent of damp earth, decaying leaves, and pine. The light is dim, a perpetual twilight, even if it were midday. Moss clings to every surface, glowing with an almost unnatural green. The silence here is different from the silence of a haunted house. It's the silence of something vast and ancient, a silence that listens. You trudge along a barely visible path, your feet sinking slightly into the soft, mulchy ground. Every snap of a twig underfoot sounds like a gunshot in the stillness. Suddenly, you sense a change. A flicker of movement high in the branches, too quick for you to properly see. A rustling that isn't the wind. Then, perhaps, a shadow detaches itself from a gnarled old cedar, and you get your first glimpse of a Tengu. These are complex beings, not easily categorized as simply good or evil. They are often depicted as bird-like humanoids, sometimes with beaks, sometimes with unusually long noses, the Hanedaka Tengu or long-nosed Tengu being a particularly iconic image. They might have wings, feathery or leathery, and often carry a hauchiwa, a magical fan made of feathers, capable of stirring up great winds. Think of them as grumpy, superpowered forest guardians with a penchant for martial arts and a distinct lack of patience for human folly. Historically, Tengu were initially considered disruptive demons and harbingers of war, often associated with bringing down arrogant Buddhist priests. Over centuries, their image evolved. While still dangerous and prone to trickery, they are notorious for spiriting people away, especially children or monks who wandered too deep into their territory. They also became known as skilled warriors and protectors of the mountains. Historians still argue whether the shifting perception of Tengu from purely malevolent to sometimes wise, albeit irascible, figures reflects changes in Buddhist and Shinto syncretism or evolving societal anxieties about the wilderness and its untamable nature. It's like how wolves went from being universally reviled to symbols of wild majesty. Perceptions change, even for mythical birdmen. You feel their gaze upon you, sharp and intelligent. Tengu are not mindless monsters. They are often portrayed as wise, if exceedingly proud and easily offended. They are said to be masters of swordsmanship and other martial arts, sometimes even taking human pupils, though such apprenticeships rarely end well for the human. They might test you, playing tricks, leading you astray with illusions, or challenging you in some way. You might hear strange flute music echoing through the trees, or the disembodied sound of a makujio, a wooden fish drum used in Buddhist temples, luring you deeper into their domain. Remember that Emafurakoso playing in the rain? He's like a toddler with a kazoo compared to these guys. A Tengu could probably summon a localized hurricane if you annoyed it enough by, say, littering in its sacred grove. One quirky tidbit about Tengu is their association with vanity and pride. Priests who became too arrogant or misused their knowledge were sometimes said to be reborn as Tengu, or to be led astray by them. So, in a way, they became a kind of supernatural karma police for the excessively smug. It adds a layer of irony to their often fearsome reputation. The ultimate punishment for being too full of yourself is to become a long-nosed bird demon. Imagine the HR write-up for that. You push a low-hanging, rain-heavy branch out of your way and stumble slightly. For a moment, you think you see a figure perched on a high limb, cloaked and still, its long nose silhouetted against the gray sky. Is it watching you? Judging you? You can't be sure. The forest is full of such illusions, tricks of light and shadow, especially when the rain is blurring your vision and the wind is making the branches dance like skeletal arms. Tengu are not the only denizens of these deep woods. The forests of Japan are a veritable menagerie of yokai. You might hear the rustling of a kodama, a tree spirit, whose presence indicates a healthy, vibrant forest. To cut down a tree inhabited by a kodama is to invite serious misfortune. These are generally benign, their whispers blending with the natural sounds of the woods, but even their gentle presence is a reminder that you are an intruder in an ancient, sacred space. Then there are less friendly entities. Imagine a sudden, unnatural stillness, the forest sounds ceasing abruptly. This could signal the approach of something truly dangerous, something that even the Tengu might treat with caution. You become acutely aware of how small and vulnerable you are in this vast, indifferent wilderness. The trees themselves seem to watch you with 1,000 unseen eyes. The path you were following seems to have vanished, or perhaps it was never really there. That's a classic Tengu trick, disorienting travelers, leading them in circles until they are hopelessly lost. You call out, but your voice is swallowed by the damp air and the rustling leaves. Only the incessant drumming of the rain answers. The feeling of being watched intensifies. It's not the burning hatred of the Onryo, nor the sorrowful gaze of the Yuria. It's something more akin to curiosity, mixed with a hint of disdain. Like a seasoned academic observing a particularly dim-witted student. You get the distinct impression that your presence here is tolerated at best. One wrong move, one sign of disrespect, and that tolerance could vanish like mist in the morning sun, replaced by something far more active and unpleasant. The rain begins to fall harder, driven by a wind that seems to whip through the trees with an intelligent, almost mischievous force. You pull your collar tighter, the chill seeping deeper, and wonder if that wind is entirely natural, or if a certain feathered fan is involved. The ancient, rain-soaked forest with its enigmatic Tengu begins to dissolve, and you find yourself pulled from the primal wilderness into a far more modern, equally unsettling landscape. The scent of damp earth and pine needles is replaced by the smell of wet concrete, exhaust fumes, and stale city air. You're now in an urban environment, perhaps a sprawling Tokyo suburb or a quieter, less traveled street in Osaka, but the rain is still falling, casting a greasy sheen on the asphalt, reflecting the neon lights in distorted, wavering streaks. This is the territory of urban legends, and one of the most chilling is the tale of the Teak Teak. You're walking alone late at night. The last train has long since departed, and the streets are eerily deserted. The rain, which was a wild, natural force in the forest, here feels different, colder, more indifferent, echoing hollowly in underpasses and drainpipes. Your footsteps splash in shallow puddles, the only sound besides the relentless drizzle and the distant hum of the city that never truly sleeps. You glance down a narrow alleyway, choked with overflowing bins and discarded cardboard boxes. A shiver runs down your spine that has nothing to do with the dampness. It's a primal instinct, the feeling of being prey. Then you hear it, a strange sound, rhythmic and unsettling, cutting through the monotonous patter of the rain. Teek, 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 teek. It's a dry, scraping, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across rough concrete. It seems to be getting closer. You pick up your pace, telling yourself it's just your imagination, or perhaps a stray cat rummaging in the bins. But the sound persists, growing louder, more distinct. Teek, 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 teek. The story of the teek teek is a relatively modern one, a true urban legend that gained popularity in the post-World War II era, a time of rapid urbanization and societal change in Japan. The most common version tells of a young woman, sometimes a schoolgirl, who met a tragic end, often by falling or being pushed onto a railway line where she was bisected by an oncoming train. Filled with rage and regret, her upper torso now haunts urban areas, dragging herself along on her hands or elbows, making that terrifying teek-teek sound. Her lower half is gone, but her desire for vengeance, or perhaps just company in her horrific state, remains terrifyingly intact. You glance over your shoulder. Nothing. Just the rain-swept street, the flickering streetlights casting long, dancing shadows. But the sound is undeniably closer now. Teek-teek, teek-teek. Your heart hammers against your ribs. This isn't like the ethereal sorrow of the eerie or the proud aloofness of the Tengu. This is something visceral, something physically broken and impossibly mobile, driven by a raw, desperate need. Historians still argue whether the emergence of such gruesome urban legends like the teek-teek reflects anxieties about the dangers of modern urban life, the impersonal nature of cities, the speed and power of new technologies like trains, and the vulnerability of individuals within these sprawling metropolises. Or perhaps it's just the human fascination with the grotesque, a modern iteration of older, cruder horror tales. It's like how every generation thinks their slasher movies are the goriest, but ultimately, they're all tapping into that same fear of sudden, violent death. A quirky and frankly terrifying tidbit associated with Teek-Teek is that she is said to be incredibly fast. Despite her gruesome mode of locomotion, she can reportedly move at speeds exceeding a running person, even chasing down cars. If she catches you, the stories say she will cut you in half with a scythe or some other sharp instrument she carries, making you like her. So it's not just a boo scare, it's a you're about to become a matching set kind of scare. Good luck outrunning that with your fancy sneakers. She's had practice. You break into a run. Your breath comes in ragged gas, your lungs burning. The sound pursues you, relentless, seemingly gaining. Teek, 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 teek. It's right behind you. You don't dare look back. You can almost feel a cold breath on your neck, smell the faint, coppery scent of old blood mixed with the rain. The streetlights seem to blur as you sprint past, the rain stinging your eyes. You're running through a nightmare landscape where the familiar urban environment has become a hunting ground. The fear is primal. This isn't a spirit you can reason with or appease with a shrine, like some of the more classical ghosts. The Teek-Teek is a manifestation of pure, physical horror and unquenchable rage. She is a raw nerve of suffering given grotesque form. There's a terrifying physicality to her legend that sets her apart from many of the more ethereal spirits. You can almost hear the grating of bone on pavement, the tearing of fabric. You risk a quick glance, and there she is, Or rather, there it is. The upper torso of a girl, her hair matted and wild, her eyes burning with a hateful light, dragging herself forward with an unnatural, horrifying speed. Her arms are sinewy, powerful. The rain plasters her tattered school uniform to her form. It's a sight that would sear itself into your memory if you were to survive it. You stumble, nearly falling, the sight threatening to paralyze you with terror. The urban setting, which should feel safe and familiar, suddenly feels alien and hostile. Every dark doorway, every unlit alley, every shadowy corner could be her hiding place. The anonymity of the city, which usually offers a sense of freedom, now means that no one would hear your screams. The rain continues to fall, washing away evidence, muffling sounds, creating a perfect atmosphere for a predator like the Teak to hunt. You remember the vague comfort of the Amafurakoso boy playing in the rain. He seems like a beloved childhood friend compared to this relentless horror. Even the proud Tengu with their feathered fans seem almost reasonable. At least they usually have a reason for their anger. The Teak just is a terrifying mobile wound upon the urban landscape. The chilling, scraping sound of the Teak fades, though the echo of her pursuit still makes your skin crawl. The urban nightmare recedes, and you find yourself drawn toward a more specific, localized haunting, one tied not just to a type of spirit, but to a particular place and a heartbreaking story. The rain continues, a mournful accompaniment to this next tale, as you approach the vicinity of an old moss-covered well. This is the setting for the story of Okiku and the Cursed Plates, a classic Japanese ghost tale, or cave. Imagine a sprawling, traditional estate, perhaps a samurai residence from centuries past. The wooden verandas are dark and slick with rain, the garden shrouded in mist. Somewhere on these grounds, hidden away or perhaps prominently featured in a now overgrown courtyard, is an old stone well. It's deep, dark, and the water at the bottom, if you could see it, would be black and still. The air around it feels heavy, sorrowful, and a chill permeates the spot, regardless of the weather. This well is not just a source of water, it's a tomb and a stage for an endless, tragic performance. The story of Okiku, in its most common form, tells of a beautiful servant girl who worked for a powerful samurai. In this household, there is a set of 10 precious porcelain plates, an heirloom of immense value. One day, one of the plates goes missing. Okiku is accused of breaking or losing it. The master of the house, or perhaps his scheming wife, flies into a rage. Despite her pleas of innocence, Okiku is punished severely. Some versions say she is tortured, others that she is thrown down the well as retribution for her perceived carelessness or theft. Her life ends in that cold, dark shaft, but her spirit does not rest. From the depths of the well, a voice begins to be heard, especially at night, counting. Ichimai 1 plate, and Imai 2 plates, Sanmai 3 plates. The voice, faint and sorrowful, counts up to 9. Humai 9 plates. Then after reaching 9, there is a pause, followed by a terrible, despairing shriek or a heartbroken wail, as she realizes the 10th plate is still missing, the cause of her unjust death forever unrectified. Then the counting begins anew, an eternal torment for Okiku, and a chilling reminder for anyone within earshot. The historical basis for the Okiku story is fascinating. Versions of this tale, known as Bancho Suryashiki, the Dish Mansion at Bancho, have existed since at least the 17th century, with numerous variations in different regions of Japan. The tale became a hugely popular subject for kabuki plays, bunraku puppet theater, and woodblock prints, cementing Okiku's place as one of Japan's most famous ghosts. The actual location of the Dish Mansion is debated, with several places in Japan claiming to be the site of the original events, each with its own well said to be haunted by Okiku. One such well exists at Himeji Castle, which adds another layer of spectral reputation to that already imposing structure. You find yourself standing near the edge of such a well, the stone curbs slick with rain and moss. You peer down into the blackness. The rain drips from the overhanging branches of a gnarled pine tree, each drop falling into the unseen water below with a faint plink. The sound seems to echo the loneliness of Okiku's fate. You can almost feel her presence, not as an aggressive force like the Onryo or the Teak-Teak, but as an almost unbearable weight of sorrow and injustice. It's a cold, damp grief that clings to this place. Historians still argue whether the enduring popularity of Okiku's story speaks to a societal preoccupation with themes of loyalty and betrayal, the vulnerability of servants, or the irreversible consequences of false accusations. Or perhaps it's simply a chillingly effective ghost story, the repetitive counting and the final shriek tapping into a primal fear of unresolved injustice and eternal recurrence. It's like a supernatural broken record, forever stuck on the most painful part of the song. A quirky tidbit about some versions of the Okiku legend is that sometimes, if a living person has the courage, or perhaps the foolishness to shout Jumai, 10 plates. After Okiku counts to 9, her spirit, hearing that the 10th plate is accounted for even if it isn't true, might be temporarily pacified or even find release, thinking her task is complete. It's a risky move, though. Imagine trying to comfort a ghost by essentially gaslighting her about her life's and afterlife's greatest trauma. There, spectral servant, the plate was here all along. My bad. This could either end very well or very, very badly. The sound begins faint at first, as if carried on the wind, or perhaps rising from the depths of the well itself. Ichimai, a young woman's voice, clear but filled with an unutterable sadness. The rain seems to quiet down, as if the very elements are holding their breath to listen. And you feel a profound sense of pity, but also a growing unease. This isn't just a story you're imagining. It feels like you're intruding on a private, eternal grief. San Mai, Sure Mai. Each number is a step closer to the inevitable, terrible climax of her count. You can almost picture her, a pale figure in the darkness below, perhaps with waterlogged hair clinging to her face, her spectral fingers ticking off the phantom plates. The injustice of her fate hangs heavy in the air. She was killed for something she likely didn't do. Her life extinguished over a piece of pottery. The pettiness of the cause makes the supernatural consequence even more chilling. Gomai Rokumai. The counting continues, steady, relentless. You wonder what would happen if you tried to leave. Would the voice follow you? Or is her sorrow forever tethered to this well, this place of her demise? The thought of being trapped here, listening to this endless cycle of grief, is a terrifying prospect in itself. It's a more subtle horror than a direct attack, but no less potent. It's the horror of inescapable repetition, of a wound that can never heal. You remember the eerie eye, the classic pale lady? Okiku is a specific, named instance of such a spirit, her story giving her a concrete, terrible anchor to this world. The rain patters on, a somber dirge for the girl in the well. The mournful counting from Okiku's well fades into the sound of the rain, which now seems to take on a different character. It's no longer just pattering on rooftops or dripping from trees. It's merging with the vast, restless expanse of the ocean. You find yourself on a desolate, wind-swept coastline, or perhaps even more unnervingly, adrift on a small, battered boat in the dead of night, with cold spray lashing your face and the deep, dark water heaving all around you. This is the domain of the Funayirai, the ghosts of those who perished at sea. The ocean at night, especially during a storm, is a terrifying place. The waves rise and fall like black, liquid mountains, the wind howls like a banshee, and the rain stings your eyes, reducing visibility to almost zero. Your small vessel creaks and groans, every timber seemingly protesting against the immense power of the sea. You feel utterly insignificant, a tiny speck at the mercy of forces far beyond your control. It's in this environment of isolation and elemental fury that the Funayirai make their dreaded appearance. These are the spirits of sailors, fishermen, and travelers who drowned, their bodies lost to the depths, their souls unable to find peace. They're said to rise from the waves, often appearing as pale, ghostly figures, sometimes shrouded in mist or seaweed. Their forms might be indistinct, their features blurred by water and decay, but their intent is chillingly clear. They seek to drag others down to join them in their watery graves. Unlike the sorrowful Okiku, whose torment is largely self-contained, or the vengeful Onryo who target specific individuals, the Funayurii are often indiscriminate in their malice, driven by a desperate loneliness or a malevolent desire for company in their suffering. Suddenly, you see them. A cluster of pale lights bobbing on the dark water, or perhaps a spectral ship, an ethereal, silent echo of a vessel long since wrecked, gliding through the storm with impossible grace. As they draw closer, you might make out individual figures, their eyes glowing with a faint, eerie light, their clothes tattered and perpetually wet. They might be trying to climb aboard your boat, their cold, grasping hands reaching over the gunwales. Or more insidiously, they might appear with the shaku ghostly ladles. The mainstream historical fact here is that Japan, being an island nation, has always had a deep and often fearful respect for the ocean. Fishing and maritime trade were vital, but the sea was also a place of immense danger and unpredictable wrath. Tales of Funayurii served as cautionary reminders of the ocean's perils and perhaps provided a supernatural explanation for the many unexplained disappearances and shipwrecks that occurred. It's one thing to lose a loved one to a storm. It's another to imagine their spirit actively trying to add to its ghostly crew. One of the most characteristic and feared aspects of an encounter with Funayurii is their demand for a ladle. They will approach a boat and ask for one, or simply try to take one. If given a ladle, they will use it to scoop seawater into the victim's boat relentlessly until it is swamped and sinks, dragging its occupants down to a watery doom. It's a terrifyingly mundane instrument of destruction, a simple kitchen utensil turned into a tool of spectral malevolence. A quirky and rather desperate folk belief suggests that if you must give them a ladle, you should give them one with no bottom or punch holes in it, so they cannot effectively fill your boat. Imagine trying to drill holes in a ladle while a horde of soggy ghosts are clamoring at your hull. Just a sec, guys. Gotta make this less efficient for your boat-sinking endeavors. Historians still argue whether the specific motif of the ladle in Funayurii tales is symbolic of the overwhelming nature of the sea itself, the endless, futile struggle against its power, or if it has some deeper, forgotten ritualistic meaning. Perhaps it's simply a chillingly domestic image twisted into something horrific, like the teak-teak's connection to everyday train travel. You feel the boat lurch violently as a wave crashes over the bow, drenching you in icy water. Through the spray and the rain, you see them, pale faces in the churning water, their eyes fixed on you with a hollow, yearning hunger. A spectral hand, slick with seaweed, grips the edge of your boat. You try to pull away, but its grip is surprisingly strong, cold as the grave. More hands appear. They aren't screaming or shouting. Their approach is often eerily silent, save for the gurgling of water and the moans of the wind. The sheer number of them can be overwhelming. It's not just one ghost. It's a legion of the drowned, a collective of lost souls. You might hear faint, gurgling whispers, pleas for help that quickly turn into threats, or simply the sound of waterlogged lungs trying to draw breath. The rain feels like their tears, or perhaps like the ocean itself trying to claim you. You remember the feeling of being watched by the tengu in the forest, but this is different. This isn't judgment. It's a desperate, possessive need. They don't want to teach you a lesson. They want to make you one of them. The tales of Funayurii are particularly potent because they tap into very real fears. The fear of drowning, the fear of the unknown depths, and the fear of being lost and forgotten. The ocean is a vast, dark cemetery, and these are its restless inhabitants. Even without the supernatural element, Being caught in a storm at sea in a small boat is a terrifying experience. The funiveri just add another layer of inescapable dread. Your tiny boat is tossed about like a toy. The rain is relentless, blurring your vision, making it hard to distinguish between wave crests and spectral forms. You feel a profound sense of hopelessness. How can you fight the sea itself? How can you escape those who have already succumbed to it and now seek to share their fate? The cold seeps into your bones, a damp, pervasive chill that seems to emanate from the ghostly figures now trying to clamber aboard, their spectral ladles ready to begin their deadly work. The only comfort, if you can call it that, is that the rain is so heavy you can barely make out their decayed features. Small mercies, the terrifying watery grasp of the funiveri loosens its hold on your imagination, and the churning dark ocean gradually gives way to something more solid, though no less imposing. The relentless rain continues, but now it streams down the formidable stone walls and gracefully curved tile roofs of an ancient Japanese castle. You find yourself standing before Himeji Castle, also known as White Heron Castle for its brilliant white exterior and elegant appearance. But beneath its beauty, like many such historical fortresses, lie tales of conflict, intrigue, and, of course, ghosts. Himeji Castle, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is one of Japan's most magnificent and well-preserved feudal castles. Its construction dates back to the 14th century, with significant expansions and renovations occurring throughout the centuries, particularly during the Sengoku, Warring States period and the early Edo period. This wasn't just a pretty palace. It was a military stronghold designed for defense with complex, labyrinthine pathways, hidden passages, and imposing fortifications. And where there is centuries of human drama, conflict, and high stakes, ghostly legends are rarely far behind. As you approach its towering main keep, the rain slickens the stone pathways, making them treacherous. The wind whistles through the arrow slits and around the eaves of the many-layered roofs, sounding like mournful sighs or distant battle cries. The castle, even in daylight, has an undeniable presence, a weight of history. At night, in the rain, it becomes something else, a silent, brooding giant, its darkened windows like empty eye sockets staring out into the storm. One of the most famous ghostly legends associated with Himeji Castle is, in fact, the very same Okiku we encountered earlier. Yes, the girl of the 10 plates. One of the prominent wells on the castle grounds, known as Okiku's Well, is said to be the well from the legend, forever echoing with her sorrowful counting. So as you wander these castle grounds, you might once again feel that specific, localized chill, that oppressive sadness, a direct callback to her tragic tale. It's like a spectral timeshare. Her sorrow isn't confined to just one imaginary well, but as a prime real estate spot at a world-famous castle. But Okiku isn't the only spirit said to linger within Himeji's walls. Castles, by their very nature, are sites of power, ambition, loyalty, betrayal, and death. Imagine the countless samurai who lived, fought, and perhaps died defending or attacking such a fortress. The anxiety of sieges, the desperation of battle, the sorrow of defeat, these powerful emotions can, according to folklore, imprint themselves onto a location, leaving spiritual residue. You might hear the faint clang of armor, the ghostly neighing of horses, or the hushed, urgent whispers of long-dead warriors planning their strategies. Historians still argue whether the proliferation of ghost stories in castles like Himeji served as a way to enhance their mystique and deter enemies through psychological warfare, or if they were simply the natural byproduct of centuries of intense human experience concentrated in one heavily fortified location. Don't attack that castle, lads. It's not just the archers you have to worry about, but also Giggles the Jester's ghost, who died of a broken heart and now replaces all the sake with lukewarm tea. Terrifying. A quirky or perhaps more strategically sensible tidbit about Japanese castle design is the deliberate complexity of their layouts. The paths leading to the main keep were often designed as confusing mazes, with dead ends, blind corners, and multiple gates. all intended to slow down and disorient attacking forces. This defensive feature, while practical, also lends itself perfectly to ghostly legends. Imagine being lost in such a labyrinth at night, with the rain pouring down, pursued not by enemy soldiers, but by something far less tangible and far more frightening. You could wander for what feels like an eternity, every rustle of the wind sounding like footsteps, every shadow seeming to take on a menacing form. You find yourself walking through one of the castle's many courtyards. The rain collects in shallow pools on the meticulously raked gravel, reflecting the dark, imposing silhouette of the keep against the stormy sky. The air is cold, and the silence is profound, broken only by the drumming rain and the occasional creak of ancient timbers. You pass a heavy wooden gate, its iron studs glinting wetly. You can almost picture samurai guards standing there centuries ago, their faces grim, their hands on their swords, peering out into a similar rainy night. There are tales of a white lady, distinct from the Western concept, a spectral figure sometimes seen gliding along the ramparts or looking out from one of the high windows. Who was she? A princess who died of grief? The wife of a besieged lord? Her identity is often lost to time, but her mournful presence is said to be a fixture. You might also hear of Mononoke unspecified spirits or entities that inhabit the darker, less visited corners of the castle, the deep storehouses, the forgotten chambers, the base of the stone foundations where perhaps prisoners were once held. The sheer age and scale of Himeji are conducive to such imaginings. The wood of its floors and pillars, some of it centuries old, has absorbed countless footsteps, whispers, and perhaps the echoes of final breaths. As you pass a darkened doorway leading into the interior of one of the castle buildings, you might feel a sudden drop in temperature, or catch a fleeting scent of old incense or something less pleasant, like stale blood or decay. Remember the Funeyerii, those ghosts of the sea? Their chill was a damp, pervasive cold. The chill within a haunted castle might feel drier, dustier, tinged with the scent of old wood and forgotten secrets. The rain seems to echo within the castle's empty halls, creating a symphony of drips, patters, and gurgles in the ancient plumbing and drainage systems. Each sound could be misinterpreted by a nervous mind as something else: footsteps, whispers, the soft closing of a distant door. You glance up at the towering keep, its white walls streaked with rain, looking almost like tears. It stands as a silent witness to centuries of human drama, and perhaps it keeps some of its more spectral residents well hidden within its formidable embrace, leaving the imposing, rain-streaked walls of Himeji Castle and its samurai-era specters behind. Your journey into the unsettling takes a turn towards the more intimately domestic, yet no less strange. The grand scale of castles and oceans shrinks, and you find yourself observing a seemingly ordinary scene, perhaps within the cozy confines of a traditional Japanese home, or maybe even in a modern apartment. The rain continues its gentle patter against the windows, a soft rhythmic backdrop to the uncanny transformation you're about to witness. Your focus shifts to a common household companion, cat. But this is no ordinary feline. This is the realm of the Bakaniko. Imagine a cat, sleek and silent, perhaps curled up on a tatami mat, its eyes half closed in that enigmatic way cats have. It could be your beloved pet, a creature of comfort and affection. But in Japanese folklore, cats possess a certain mystique, an awareness that hints at something more than simple animal instinct. And under certain conditions, usually when they reach an advanced age, or grow to a certain size, or are particularly well cared for, or conversely cruelly mistreated, they can undergo a supernatural transformation, becoming a Bakaniko, a changed cat or monster cat. The initial signs might be subtle. The cat might start walking on its hind legs, perhaps when it thinks no one is looking. It might be seen attempting to speak human words, its meows taking on an unsettlingly articulate quality. It might develop an unusual craving for lamp oil, a rather specific and historically noted trait, as old lamps use fish oil. Or more disturbingly, it might start to exhibit an uncanny intelligence, a cunning that seems almost human. You might notice it watching you with an unnerving, calculating gaze, as if it understands every word you say, every thought you have. The Bakaniko is not always malevolent, but is certainly powerful and unpredictable. It can shapeshift, often taking the form of a human, sometimes even its own master or mistress. It can summon fireballs, Nico Bai, or cat fire. It can reanimate corpses, using them like puppets. And in some of the more sinister tales, it can curse or even kill its former owners, especially if it was abused. Remember that slightly unsettling feeling when a cat stares at you too intently? Amplify that by 1,000, and add the possibility that it might be plotting to replace you after learning to talk by mimicking your voice. The historical context for Bakaniko stories is rich. Cats were introduced to Japan from China, primarily to protect Buddhist scriptures from mice around the Nara or early Heian periods. Their aloof nature, nocturnal habits, and glowing eyes likely contributed to their mystical reputation. During the Edo period, when many classic yokai tales were popularized, stories about Bakaniko flourished, appearing in kabuki plays, literature, and art. It became a common belief that cats, especially those with long tails, were more prone to becoming Bakaniko. This even led to a preference for bobtailed cats in Japan, like the Japanese bobtail breed, a quirky tidbit born from supernatural fear. So if your cat has a suspiciously short tail, it might not just be a breed characteristic. It could be preventative folklore in action. Historians still argue whether the fear of Bakaniko reflected anxieties about the blurring lines between the human and animal worlds, the unsettling intelligence sometimes observed in domestic animals, or if it was a metaphorical expression of hidden dangers within the household itself, the seemingly benign companion harboring secret powers or grudges. It's like worrying if your smart speaker is really listening to you. Except this smart speaker might also be able to set your house on fire with a flick of its spectral tail. You observe the cat in your imagined room. The rain outside creates a soft, cozy atmosphere, kind of weather perfect for napping. The cat stretches languidly, its claws extending and retracting, but then its head cocks at an unnatural angle. Its eyes, which were a moment ago sleepy slits, now seem to glow with an inner light. It rises, not on 4 paws, but slowly, deliberately, onto its hind legs. It stands there, swaying slightly, its tail, perhaps a normal length, perhaps unnervingly long and forked like the even more powerful Nakomata, a related cat yokai, twitching behind it. It might then begin to dance, a strange, unearthly jig, or it might approach a shoji screen and cast a shadow that is not its own, but that of a human figure. The unsettling thing about the Bakaniko is its mimicry, its ability to adopt human traits and behaviors, but always with an underlying current of something not quite right. It's the uncanny valley, feline edition. One tale tells of a Bakaniko that replaced its elderly owner, perfectly mimicking her voice and mannerisms, while keeping the real woman imprisoned. Another speaks of a cat that learned to manipulate its master by speaking in the voice of his deceased wife. These stories tap into a deep-seated fear of deception and the unknown capabilities of those closest to us. Even the Tengu in the forest, for all their pride and trickery, were at least overtly non-human. The Bakaniko operates from within the heart of the home. The rain continues its soft drumming. The cat, or what was a cat, might now be looking directly at you, its expression unreadable. Is it curious? Playful? Or is there a hint of something darker in its gaze, a flicker of ancient, predatory intelligence? You remember all the times you've shooed a cat off the counter or ignored its pleas for an early dinner. Suddenly, those minor grievances take on a new, potentially ominous significance. You wouldn't want your little fluffy to hold a grudge capable of manifesting as pyrokinesis, would you? The transformation is complete. The creature before you might still resemble a cat, but it is clearly something more, something other. It might pad silently across the room, its movements too fluid, too controlled. It might let out a sound that is halfway between a meow and a human word, a chilling vocalization that sends shivers down your spine. The cozy domestic scene has become a stage for the uncanny, all under the gentle, persistent rhythm of the falling rain. The unsettling image of the transforming Bakaniko, its feline form twisting into something more uncanny within the rain-swept room, begins to fade. You are drawn back towards the raw, potent emotions that fuel the most terrifying of spirits, returning to the domain of the unreal, the vengeful ghost. But this time, it's not a generalized rage you encounter. It's a specific, legendary fury, the story of Oiwa-san, perhaps Japan's most famous and feared onryo. The setting becomes oppressive, charged with an almost palpable sense of betrayal and suffering. The rain outside seems to weep, a constant, sorrowful drizzle. That mirrors the tragedy about to unfold. Imagine a humble, perhaps slightly dilapidated house from Edo period Japan. Inside, a young woman, Oiwa, is living a life of quiet desperation. She is married to Iman, a ronin, a masterless samurai, who is cruel, ambitious, and faithless. He desires a wealthier, more advantageous match, and with the help of an unscrupulous associate, plots to be rid of his unassuming wife. The method of Oiwa's demise is particularly horrific and forms the core of her vengeful power. She is given a poison-face cream. Instead of enhancing her beauty, the cream grotesquely disfigures one side of her face, her eye drooping, her hair falling out in clumps on that side. The visual is stark and terrifying. Confronted with her reflection, driven mad by pain, betrayal, and despair, Oiwa meets a tragic end. In some versions, she accidentally impales herself on a sword while stumbling in her grief-stricken state. In others, she is outright murdered by Iman or his accomplices. Her body, along with that of her infant child, who also perishes in some tellings, is unceremoniously disposed of, perhaps nailed to a wooden plank and thrown into a river. But Oiwa does not rest. Her spirit, consumed by an all-encompassing rage and an unquenchable thirst for vengeance, returns as a terrifying onryo. And her revenge is not swift or simple. It is a protracted, psychological torment that drives Iman to madness and ruin. Her disfigured face appears to him everywhere, in lanterns, in mirrors, in the faces of others. The mainstream historical fact is that the story of Oiwa, Takedo Yatsuya Kaden, Ghost Story of Yatsuya, was written for the Kabuki Theater in 1825 by Tsuruya Namboka IV and became an instant, sensational success. Its themes of betrayal, domestic cruelty, and spectacular ghostly vengeance resonated deeply with Edo audiences and have continued to terrify and fascinate Japan for nearly 2 centuries. You can almost feel the oppressive atmosphere of Iman's guilt and Oiwa's encroaching presence. The rain against the shoji screen sounds like her ragged, sobbing breaths, or perhaps her nails scratching to get in. Every shadow seems to lengthen and distort, taking on the vague outline of her ruined face. The horror of Oiwa's story lies not just in her ghostly appearances, but in the profound injustice and cruelty she suffered. She was a victim of domestic abuse and callous ambition, her life and dignity stolen from her. Her rage is, in a grim way, understandable, even righteous. Historians still argue whether the immense popularity of Yatsuya Kaden was due to its satisfying portrayal of supernatural justice in a society where real-world justice for women was often lacking, or if it simply catered to a public appetite for gruesome horror and sensationalism. It's probably a bit of both, isn't it? Like how people enjoy true crime podcasts. There's the thrill of the macabre, but also often a sense of outrage at the injustice. A quirky and rather chilling tidbit concerns the superstition surrounding stage productions of Yatsuya Kaden. As mentioned with onryo in general, it's believed that Oiwa's spirit is so powerful and vengeful that actors and crew members must visit her grave. There are several shrines and grave sites associated with her legend to pay their respects and pray for a safe production. lest they suffer accidents, illness, or other misfortunes. Some theaters still perform purification rituals before staging the play. It's a testament to the enduring power of her story that even performers who deal in illusion take precautions against the real thing. Imagine having to apologize to a ghost before you even start rehearsals. So sorry, Oiwa-san. Hope you like my portrayal of your horrific disfigurement and subsequent vengeance spree. You feel a cold dread creep over you, the kind that comes from witnessing an inescapable, unfolding tragedy. Oiwa's presence is not just a fleeting glimpse. It's an insidious infection in Iman's mind. He sees her disfigured face and his new wife's features on their wedding night, leading him to murder her in a fit of terror. He is haunted by visions, by her voice, by her relentless, accusatory presence. She is a psychic toxin, destroying everything he touches. Remember the general concept of the Onryo seeking to dismantle lives? Oiwa is the masterclass. Her image, particularly the half-ruined face, became iconic. It was a visual representation of her suffering and her rage. Unlike the ethereal eerie, whose sorrow might evoke pity, Oiwa's appearance is designed to inspire terror and revulsion, mirroring the ugliness of the deeds committed against her. The rain outside seems to intensify, matching the rising crescendo of her ghostly campaign. Each drop could be a tear she shed, now turned to acid, burning away Iman's sanity. The story of Oiwa is a stark reminder of how profound human cruelty can be, and how, in the realm of folklore, such cruelty can give birth to a supernatural force of almost unimaginable destructive power. It's a more focused, personal horror than the anonymous dread of the Funayuri or the wild strangeness of the Tengu. This is about human relationships gone monstrously wrong, about vows broken and trust shattered, and the terrible spectral price that must be paid. The rain continues to fall, a somber witness to Oiwa's enduring, terrifying vow of vengeance. The intense, vengeful fury of Oiwa-san begins to dissipate, though the echo of her disfigured face and chilling pursuit lingers in the back of your mind. The rain, which seemed to weep for her tragedy, now softens slightly, becoming a more gentle, almost dreamlike patter. Your focus shifts from the waking world horrors to the unsettling landscape of sleep and dreams, and the creatures that might inhabit them. You are now entering the territory of the Baku, the Dream Eaters. Imagine yourself drifting into sleep, that pleasant, hazy state where thoughts become fluid and the boundaries of reality blur. The gentle rain outside is a soothing lullaby, conducive to slumber. But not all dreams are pleasant. Sometimes, the shadows in your mind coalesce into something frightening, a pursuit, a fall, a monstrous visage. These are the nightmares that the Baku are said to prey upon. The Baku, as traditionally depicted in Japanese folklore and art, is a strange, chimera-like creature. It's often described as having the trunk and tusks of an elephant, the eyes of a rhinoceros, the body of a bear or a tiger, the tail of an ox, and the legs of a tiger. It's a decidedly odd-looking beast, almost as if assembled from the spare parts of other animals. Despite its potentially fearsome appearance, the Baku is generally considered a benevolent yokai, a protector against bad dreams. Children in Japan, even today, might sometimes call out Baku-san, "Come eat my dream," if they awaken from a nightmare. It's a bit like a supernatural dream catcher, but instead of just filtering bad dreams, it devours them. However, there's a subtle unease associated with the Baku as well. While they consume nightmares, some legends suggest that if a Baku is particularly hungry, or if it's not a purely benevolent one, it might also consume the dreamer's hopes and aspirations along with the bad dream, leaving them empty and hollow. So, inviting one in is a bit of a gamble. Thanks for eating that nightmare where I was unprepared for my exam, Baku-san. Oh, wait, where did my lifelong ambition to become a concert pianist go? The historical origins of the Baku are thought to trace back to Chinese folklore, with its image and attributes evolving over time in Japan. Talismans and pictures of the Baku were often placed in bedrooms, especially those of children, to ward off nightmares. The mainstream historical fact is that during the Edo period, it was common for pillows to be adorned with images of the Baku, or for its name to be written on them, in the hope of ensuring peaceful sleep. This practice reflects a deep-seated human desire to control or influence the mysterious world of dreams. You find yourself in that unsettling space of a lucid nightmare. You are aware that you are dreaming, but you are trapped in a scenario of fear. Perhaps you are being chased by a shadowy figure, like the teak-teak you encountered earlier, or you're falling endlessly, or you're confronted by a disfigured face reminiscent of Oiwa. The fear is palpable, your dream self's heart pounding. The rain you hear is no longer the real rain outside your window, but a dream rain, cold and disorienting. Then you sense a new presence in the dream. Not the source of the nightmare, but something else, something powerful. The Baku arrives. It might not make a grand entrance. It might simply materialize from the dream stuff itself. Its strange, composite form is both reassuring and slightly unnerving. It moves with a slow, deliberate gait, its elephant-like trunk sniffing the air, sensing the fear, the dark energy of the nightmare. Historians still argue whether the concept of the Baku reflects an early understanding of the therapeutic nature of processing bad dreams by feeding them to a symbolic entity, or if it was simply a comforting myth to allay common nighttime fears, especially in children. It's a more proactive approach than just hoping the scary thoughts go away, giving a tangible, mythical solution. A quirky tidbit about the Baku is that in some traditions, if you wake up from a particularly vivid or terrifying nightmare, you are supposed to repeat, "I give this dream to the Baku 3 times to ensure it doesn't come back or have any lingering ill effects." It's a simple ritual, a small act of psychological transference. It's almost like forwarding a particularly nasty email to the spam folder of the collective unconscious. You watch as the dream Baku approaches the source of your nightmare. The shadowy pursuer, the terrifying visage, whatever form your fear has taken, seems to shrink in its presence. The Baku doesn't fight the nightmare in a conventional sense. It consumes it. Its trunk extends, and the dark energies, the frightening images, are drawn into it, as if being vacuumed up. There's a sense of relief as the oppressive atmosphere of the nightmare begins to lift. The dreamscape around you might even brighten, the dream rain softening. But then you remember the warning. What if it takes too much? You observe the Baku, its strange eyes unreadable. Is it satisfied with just the nightmare, or will it hungrily devour your pleasant dreams too, your hopes, your aspirations? There's a delicate balance here. The Baku is a powerful force, and inviting such power, even for benevolent purposes, always carries a slight risk. You remember the Bakaniko, the cat yokai, whose intentions could shift from playful to sinister. The Baku, too, exists in that ambiguous space. The nightmare fades completely thanks to the Baku's intervention. The dream world becomes calm, peaceful. The Baku itself might give a ponderous nod or simply turn and amble away, its task complete. Or it might linger for a moment, its gaze fixed on you, making you wonder what price, if any, was paid for its services. The gentle patter of the real-world rain begins to filter back into your consciousness, pulling you from the depths of the dream world. You feel a sense of gratitude, but perhaps also a faint, lingering unease. Dealing with supernatural entities, even helpful ones, is rarely straightforward. The dream world, after all, is their turf, and you were just a visitor. The hazy, dreamlike encounter with the Baku recedes, and as you drift back toward a more tangible, albeit still spectral reality, the gentle rain seems to take on a hollow, empty sound. You find yourself confronting a different kind of spiritual suffering, one born not of rage or sorrow in the same way as the onryo or yurei, but of insatiable, gnawing hunger. This is the realm of the gaki, or hungry ghosts, a concept deeply rooted in Buddhist cosmology. Imagine a desolate, barren landscape, perhaps a rocky wasteland under a perpetually gray, weeping sky. The rain here doesn't nourish. It just makes the dust cling and the sharp stones glisten. Or perhaps you see them closer to human habitation, lurking in the shadows of temples or on the outskirts of villages, forever seeking something they can never truly obtain. The Gaki are spirits of those who, in their human lives, were excessively greedy, envious, or gluttonous. As karmic retribution, they are reborn into the realm of hungry ghosts, one of the 6 realms of existence in Buddhist tradition, a place of constant, agonizing hunger and thirst. Their appearance is often grotesque and pitiable. They are typically depicted with emaciated bodies, stick-thin limbs, and grotesquely swollen bellies, a visual representation of their unfulfillable craving. Their necks are often described as being as thin as needles, and their mouths as small as pinholes, so that even if they find food or water, they can barely consume it. Any sustenance they do manage to ingest often turns to fire or filth in their mouths, prolonging their torment. It's a truly horrific state of being, an eternal, self-inflicted purgatory of want. You sense their presence not as a direct threat, like the teak-teak, but as an overwhelming aura of desperation and need. It's a chilling, gnawing emptiness that seems to leach the warmth and vitality from the air around them. The rain feels cold and insufficient, offering no solace to their parched existence. These are not ghosts seeking vengeance for wrongs done to them, but spirits suffering the consequences of their own past actions. The mainstream historical fact is that the concept of Gaki, Sanskrit, Preta, is a significant part of Buddhist teachings across many Asian countries, not just Japan. Stories and depictions of hungry ghosts serve as powerful moral lessons, illustrating the karmic consequences of unchecked desire and materialism. Offerings are often made to them, particularly during certain Buddhist festivals like Obon, not just to appease them, but also out of compassion and as a way for the living to cultivate generosity and reflect on their own attachments. You might see a group of them huddled together, their skeletal frames trembling, their eyes wide with a desperate, searching look. They might reach out with bony fingers, not to attack, but to beg. Their voices, if you hear them, are weak, rasping whispers, pleading for a morsel of food, a drop of water. It's a profoundly sad and unsettling sight. Unlike the terrifying Onryo Oiwa, whose rage was a force of nature, the Gaki are defined by their powerlessness, their eternal unsatisfied craving. Historians still argue whether the specific imagery and narrative surrounding Gaki in Japan were influenced more by imported Buddhist texts or by indigenous pre-Buddhist beliefs about spirits of the improperly buried or unmourned dead, who might also suffer from a kind of deprivation in the afterlife. It's likely a syncretic blend, as many elements of Japanese folklore are. It's like trying to figure out if your fear of public speaking is from a past life trauma or just, regular anxiety. A quirky and somewhat unsettling tidbit about Gaki is that some tales suggest they can occasionally influence the living, subtly whispering temptations of greed or gluttony, perhaps hoping to create more company in their miserable realm. It's a rather grim form of multi-level marketing for eternal suffering. Join us in the realm of hungry ghosts. Unlimited cravings, zero satisfaction, and your belly will look impressively, horrifyingly bloated. The rain continues its dreary fall. You observe these wretched spirits, and a complex mix of pity and revulsion might wash over you. They are a vivid illustration of a spiritual concept, a walking, suffering metaphor for the dangers of unchecked desire. Their hunger is not just physical. It's a spiritual emptiness, a void that can never be filled. You might feel a strange, sympathetic pang of hunger or thirst yourself, a faint echo of their all-consuming need. These are not ghosts like Okiku, tied to a specific place or object by her sorrow. The Gaki inhabit an entire realm of suffering, and their presence can be felt wherever extreme want and deprivation exist. Their suffering is a constant, a background hum of misery in the spiritual ecosystem. You remember the Baku, the dream eater, which could sometimes take too much. The Gaki represent a state where too much was taken or hoarded in life, leading to an eternity of having nothing. Their plight is a stark contrast to the often dynamic and purposeful actions of other spirits. The Uriite seeks resolution, the Onryo seeks revenge, the Tengu guard their domains. Even the Bakaniko has its strange, intelligent agenda. The Gaki, however, are trapped in a passive state of perpetual longing. Their horror is not in what they do to you, but in what they are, a terrifying vision of a potential spiritual dead end. The patter of rain on the barren ground around him seems to offer no relief, each drop a reminder of the sustenance they cannot properly receive. You feel a chill that is not just from the dampness, but from the profound spiritual coldness of their existence. It's a quiet, desperate horror, a vision of eternal, unsatisfied desire, made all the more unsettling by the steady, indifferent fall of the rain, the desolate, sorrowful realm of the Gaki, and their gnawing hunger begins to fade from your mind's eye. The rain, which felt so bleak and unhelpful in their presence, now takes on a more mysterious, veiling quality. It becomes a curtain, obscuring pathways, muffling sounds, and perhaps concealing the passage between worlds. You find yourself contemplating a phenomenon that is less about a specific type of ghost or yokai, and more about an unsettling event, kamikakushi, or being hidden by gods, spirited away. Imagine a child playing in a field as dusk begins to settle, the light turning golden and hazy. Or perhaps a lone traveler walking along a mountain path, the trees pressing in close on either side. The rain might be a soft drizzle, blurring the edges of the world, making familiar landmarks seem strange and distant. Suddenly, inexplicably, they are gone, vanished without a trace. No struggle, no witnesses, just an empty space where a person used to be. This is the essence of kamikakushi. While the term translates as hidden by gods, kami, implying benevolent or at least neutral divine beings, it's often associated with yokai or other supernatural entities. The Tengu we encountered earlier, with their penchant for trickery and leading travelers astray in the mountains, are classic culprits. Sometimes foxes, kitsune, known for their cunning and illusionary powers, are blamed. In other cases, it might be malevolent spirits or demons who snatch people away for their own inscrutable purposes. The key element is the sudden, inexplicable nature of the disappearance, often from seemingly safe or familiar surroundings. The feeling evoked by kamikakushi is one of profound unease and mystery. It's not the visceral terror of the teak-teak or the vengeful rage of Oiwa. It's a quieter, more unsettling fear, the fear of the unknown, of unseen forces that can pluck someone out of existence. The rain, in this context, acts as a perfect accomplice, creating an atmosphere of isolation and disorientation, making it easier for someone to become lost, both literally and perhaps supernaturally. You can almost feel that slight disorientation yourself, the world becoming a little less solid, a little more mutable. The mainstream historical fact is that in pre-modern Japan, when remote communities were more isolated and the wilderness was a more dominant and feared presence, unexplained disappearances were likely not uncommon. Kamikakushi provided a framework for understanding these events, attributing them to the actions of the supernatural rather than more mundane, though often equally tragic, causes like accidents, animal attacks, or foul play. It was a way of coping with the unbearable mystery of a loved one simply vanishing. You picture a small, worried group of villagers, perhaps with flickering lanterns, searching through the rainy twilight for a missing child. Their calls echo unanswered through the woods. The rain drips from the leaves, each drop seeming to mock their efforts. The forest, which just hours before was a familiar playground or source of firewood, now feels alien and hostile, as if it has swallowed the missing person whole. The air is thick with a sense of dread and helplessness. Historians still argue whether tales of Kamikakushi serve primarily as cautionary tales to keep children from wandering off and to encourage respect for the sacred, untamed places believed to be inhabited by spirits, or if they reflected a deeper philosophical anxiety about the porous boundaries between the human world and the spiritual realm. It's like those old fairy tales that warn children not to go into the woods, practical advice wrapped in a layer of magical threat. A quirky and rather poignant tidbit related to Kamikakushi is that sometimes those who were spirited away would mysteriously reappear days, months, or even years later. They might have no memory of where they had been, or they might tell strange, unbelievable tales of feasting with spirits or visiting otherworldly realms. Often, they were subtly changed, perhaps seeming dazed, or possessing new, uncanny knowledge. This aspect of potential return, however slim, added another layer of complexity to the phenomenon, a sliver of hope mixed with the dread. Imagine the emotional turmoil. He's back, but he keeps trying to pay for things with shiny leaves and insists his best friend is a badger who can recite poetry. Close enough, you find yourself walking along a misty mountain trail. The rain is soft but persistent, and the visibility is poor. The path ahead seems to twist and disappear into the gray. You hear a strange sound, perhaps the distant music we associated with the Tengu, or a faint, alluring voice calling your name from the depths of the forest. There's a temptation to investigate, to step off the known path and into the unknown. This is how it begins, perhaps. A moment of distraction, a wrong turn, a step into a place where the veil between worlds is thin. The feeling is one of being subtly lured, or perhaps gently but irresistibly drawn away. It's not a violent abduction, but a quiet, almost imperceptible transition from the ordinary to the extraordinary. You might look back and find the path you were on has vanished, or the familiar sounds of the human world have faded, replaced by an unnatural stillness or strange, ethereal noises. The rain itself might feel different, colder, or imbued with a strange, soporific quality. You remember the Bakaniko, which could mimic and deceive from within the home. Kamikakushi is deception on a grander scale, the landscape itself becoming a trickster, or the spirits within it orchestrating a silent, invisible kidnapping. It's the fear of losing oneself, not just physically, but perhaps also losing one's connection to reality, to the human world. The silence of the misty, rain-swept woods is broken only by the drip of water and the beating of your own heart, which seems to grow louder in the unnerving quiet. You are alone, and the world around you feels increasingly unreal, as if you've stepped into a dream, or perhaps someone else's. The unsettling mystery of Kamikakushi, of being spirited away into the rain-veiled unknown, begins to lift, but the chill remains, perhaps even deepens. The rain, which was a soft, obscuring drizzle, now feels colder, sharper, as if heralding a change in season, or the arrival of a very specific, wintry presence. You find yourself in a landscape transformed by ice and snow, though the sound of freezing rain or sleet might still be present, a harsh, crystalline whisper. This is the domain of the Yukiana, the snow woman. Imagine a fierce blizzard sweeping across a remote mountain pass or a desolate northern plain. The wind howls with a savage fury, driving pellets of ice and snow horizontally, stinging any exposed skin. Visibility is reduced to a few feet, the world a swirling vortex of white. Travelers caught in such a storm are in mortal danger, at risk of freezing, losing their way, or succumbing to exhaustion. It is in these extreme conditions, often at the height of the storm's fury, that the Yukiana is said to appear. She is often described as ethereally beautiful, with long black hair contrasting sharply with her deathly pale, almost translucent skin and deep, piercing violet or blue eyes. She glides silently over the snow, leaving no footprints, sometimes appearing as a tall, stately figure draped in a pure white kimono that blends seamlessly with the snowy landscape. Her beauty is captivating, hypnotic, but it is a deadly allure. She is the personification of winter's cruel, indifferent beauty and its capacity for sudden, lethal cold. The encounter with a Yukiana is rarely a prolonged chase or a complex interaction. She might simply appear before a lost and freezing traveler, her presence an almost serene contrast to the raging storm. She might fix them with her chilling gaze or breathe upon them with her icy breath, and they will be frozen solid, found later as ice statues, sometimes with a peaceful, almost enraptured expression on their faces. There's a quiet lethality to her, a stark finality. The rain or sleet in this context feels like tiny shards of glass, reinforcing the biting cold she embodies. The mainstream historical fact is that tales of the Yukiana are found throughout Japan, particularly in the colder, snowier regions like Aomori, Yamagata, and Nagano prefectures. Lafcadio Hearn, one of the first Westerners to extensively document Japanese folklore, included a famous version of her story in his 1904 book Kwaidan, Stories and Studies of Strange Things, which helped introduce her to a wider international audience. Her legend taps into the very real and primal fear of freezing to death, a common danger in harsh winter climates. You feel an unnatural, bone-deep chill creep over you, far colder than the ambient temperature would suggest. The wind seems to whisper her name. Through the swirling snow and sleet, you see a figure approaching, moving with an effortless, gliding motion. Her beauty is striking, almost painful to look at in its perfection, yet there is an undeniable aura of death about her. She is as beautiful and as merciless as the winter storm itself. You remember the sorrow of Okiku in the well. The Yukiana's sorrow, if she has any, is a much colder, more detached emotion, if it exists at all. She is more an elemental force than a wronged human spirit. Historians still argue whether the Yukiana myth originated as a way to explain deaths by exposure in winter, personifying the lethal cold as a beautiful but deadly woman, or if she has roots in older animistic beliefs about mountain spirits and the powerful, often dangerous, deities of winter. Perhaps she's the ultimate femme fatale if your definition of fatal involves being turned into a human popsicle. A quirky, and in some versions slightly more nuanced tidbit about the Yukiana is that not all encounters are immediately fatal. In some tales, she might spare a person, often a young, handsome man, on the condition that they never speak of having seen her. If they break this promise, she will return to claim their life, or the life of a loved one. This adds a psychological element to her terror, the burden of a deadly secret. It's like a supernatural non-disclosure agreement, but with significantly higher stakes than your average corporate contract. Sure, I'll keep quiet about seeing a terrifying ice spirit, as long as my eyebrows don't freeze off. The air around her is so cold it seems to crackle. Your breath plumes in front of you, then seems to freeze and fall as ice crystals. She might speak, her voice like the tinkling of icicles or the mournful sigh of the winter wind, but often she is silent, her intentions clear in her chilling gaze and the deadly aura she projects. There's a terrible passivity to her power. She doesn't need to strive or rage like an Onryo. The cold she commands is absolute. You recall the Funayuri, dragging sailors into the cold depths of the ocean. The Yukiana offers a different kind of cold death, a frozen stillness on land. Her victims are not consumed or torn apart. They are preserved, frozen in their final moment. There's a strange, almost artistic quality to her work, a terrifying tableau of winter's power. The rain has fully transitioned to sleet now, each particle stinging your face. You feel your limbs growing heavy, your thoughts becoming sluggish. The beauty of the Yukiana is strangely captivating, and a part of you, a deeply tired, freezing part, might almost welcome the oblivion she offers. This is one of her most insidious aspects, the way she can make death by freezing seem almost peaceful, an alluring surrender to the cold. The world around you is a stark, beautiful, and deadly white, and she is its queen. The only sound is the hiss of the sleet and the howl of the wind, her constant companions. The biting, crystalline chill of the Yukiana and her snow-swept domain begins to recede, though a lingering coldness seems to cling to the air. The harsh sound of sleet softens once more into a steady, melancholic rain. You find yourself drawn towards a tale that combines artistry, devotion, and a terrible, spectral price. This is the story of Hoichi the Earless, or Miminashi Hoichi. Imagine an ancient temple by the sea, perhaps near the Straits of Shimonoseki, the site of the famous 12th century naval battle of Dano-Ura, where the Minamoto clan decisively defeated the Terra clan, leading to the tragic drowning of the child Emperor Antoku and many Terra warriors. The rain drifts down, soaking the temple grounds, pooling in the ancient stone lanterns. The air is heavy with history and the faint, salty tang of the nearby ocean. Inside one of the temple buildings, a blind Biwa Hoshi, a lute-playing minstrel priest, named Hoichi, is renowned for his incredible skill in reciting the Haika Monogatari, the epic tale of the rise and fall of the Terra clan, particularly his rendition of the Battle of Dano-Ura. Hoichi is poor and blind, but his talent is immense. His voice, accompanied by the soulful tones of his biwa, can move listeners to tears, vividly painting scenes of heroism, tragedy, and loss. One rainy night, while Hoichi is alone in the temple, he is approached by a gruff, imposing samurai. This samurai summons Hoichi to perform for his lord, a nobleman of high rank who is staying nearby and wishes to hear the famed minstrel. Hoichi, being a humble priest, has little choice but to obey. He is led, blind as he is, through the rainy night to what feels like a grand residence. He is brought before a large, silent assembly. Though he cannot see them, he senses their noble bearing. He is commanded to recite the tale of the Battle of Dano-Ura. Hoichi pours all his skill and emotion into the performance. As he sings of the Terra's bravery, their defeat, the drowning of the young emperor and his court, he hears sounds of profound grief from his unseen audience, sighs, sobs, even wails of anguish. His performance is a triumph, moving his listeners beyond measure. The samurai who fetched him praises his skill and tells him his lord is greatly pleased, instructing Hoichi to return for the next 6 nights to continue his recitation, promising a generous reward. He is also warned not to speak of these nightly visits to anyone. The mainstream historical fact is that the Haika Monogatari is a cornerstone of Japanese literature, and its recitation by Biwa Hoshi was a popular form of entertainment and historical remembrance for centuries. The Battle of Dano-Ura itself is a pivotal event in Japanese history, marking the end of the Genpei War and the establishment of the Kamakura shogunate. Hoichi's story, therefore, is deeply intertwined with actual historical events and cultural traditions. Each night, Hoichi is fetched by the samurai, led through the rain, and performs for the spectral court. He notices the increasing intensity of their sorrow. Meanwhile, the head priest of Hoichi's temple becomes concerned. Hoichi is disappearing every night, and when he returns before dawn, he seems exhausted and strangely pale. One night, the priest has his servants follow Hoichi. They are horrified by what they see. Hoichi is not in some grand mansion. He is in a nearby cemetery, sitting before the tomb of Emperor Antoku, surrounded by a ghostly assembly of the Terra court, playing his biwa and singing with all his heart, while spectral figures weep and keen around him in the pouring rain. He is performing for the dead. Remember the Funayirii, those ghosts of the sea? These are their land-bound, noble counterparts, still grieving their watery graves. Historians still argue whether tales like Hoichi's served as a way to process national traumas like the Genpei War, giving voice to the lingering grief of the vanquished, or if they were primarily cautionary tales about the dangers of interacting too closely with the spirit world, even with artistic intent. It's a bit like wondering if war movies are about honoring the fallen or just action-packed entertainment. The head priest, Realizing the grave danger Hoi-Chi is in performing for such powerful, sorrowful spirits is draining his life force, devises a plan. He and another priest paint Hoi-Chi's entire body with sutras, sacred Buddhist texts, to make him invisible to the ghosts. However, in their haste, they forget to paint his ears. That night, when the spectral samurai comes to fetch Hoi-Chi, he calls out, but Hoi-Chi, instructed to remain silent and still, does not answer. The samurai can see nothing of Hoi-Chi's body due to the sutras, but he sees the unpainted ears. "Here are his ears," the samurai exclaims. "The musician is here, but only his ears are visible. Well, I will take these to my lord, to show we at least found part of him." And with that, the samurai rips off Hoi-Chi's ears. A quirky and rather gruesome tidbit. Hoi-Chi, despite the agonizing pain, makes no sound, following the priest's strict instructions. The ghosts, unable to find the rest of him, depart. Hoi-Chi is saved from further spectral performances, but at the cost of his ears, thereafter being known as Miminashi Hoi-Chi, Hoi-Chi the Earless. His story, though, makes him even more famous, and people flock to hear him play, his tragic tale adding another layer of pathos to his art. It's the ultimate suffering for your art story, though perhaps a bit more literal than most artists intend. My ears? Oh, just a little something I picked up, or rather lost, at a gig with some very enthusiastic, very dead nobles. The rain seems to fall more softly now, a mournful accompaniment to Hoi-Chi's tale. You can almost hear the plangent notes of his biwa, feel the deep sorrow of the terror ghosts, and the quiet courage of the blind minstrel. His story is a poignant reminder of the power of art to bridge worlds, but also of the potential dangers that lie in such connections. The unseen audience, the spectral tears, the terrible price for his talent, it all unfolds under the watchful weeping sky, the rain a constant witness to his extraordinary and painful fate, the poignant, sorrowful notes of Hoi-Chi the Earless biwa, and the image of his spectral audience in the rain-swept cemetery gradually fade. The rain, however, continues its steady presence, perhaps now a little more insistent, drumming against unseen windows as you are drawn back into the realm of urban legends, and to an encounter that is both deeply unsettling and chillingly direct. You are about to come face to face with the Kukase Kana, the slit-mouthed woman. Imagine you're walking down a quiet, dimly lit street at dusk, or perhaps even in broad daylight, but in a deserted part of town. The rain is a light drizzle, enough to make the pavement slick and the air feel heavy. A woman approaches you. She's wearing a surgical mask, which, especially in Japan, isn't an uncommon sight, often worn by people who are ill or wish to avoid pollen or pollution. She might also be wearing a trench coat, her features partially obscured by a hat or her hair. She seems ordinary enough at first. As she gets closer, she stops you. Her eyes, the only part of her face clearly visible above the mask, are intense, unsettling. Then she speaks, her voice perhaps muffled by the mask, but her question is chillingly clear. Wadashi Kiriya? Am I pretty? This is the moment of terrifying decision. How you answer determines your fate. The legend of the Kukase Kana has several variations, but this initial encounter is a common thread. If you say no, she will, in most versions, attack you immediately, often with a pair of large scissors, a sickle, or some other sharp implement she carries concealed. If you say yes, she will then remove her mask, revealing her horrifying disfigurement. Her mouth is slit from ear to ear, a grotesque, gaping wound. She then asks, "Kore demo? Even like this? Or how about now?" If you again answer yes out of terror, or try to scream or run, she will often slit your mouth to resemble hers. If you answer no to the second question, she will cut you in half. There seems to be no truly safe answer. It's a deadly catch-22, a conversation you cannot win. The rain seems to enhance the sense of entrapment, the slick streets making escape difficult, the gray light adding to the oppressive atmosphere. The mainstream historical fact is that the Kukase Kana legend experienced a major resurgence in Japan in the late 1970s, causing widespread panic, particularly among children. Reports of sightings, though unconfirmed, led to schools implementing safety measures, with children being escorted home by teachers or parents. It was a genuine social phenomenon, a modern urban legend spreading like wildfire, fueled by media attention and playground gossip. This makes her distinct from ancient spirits like the Tengu or the Eerie. She is a product of more contemporary anxieties. You stand frozen on that rainy street, her masked face close to yours, her eyes boring into you. The question hangs in the air, heavy with menace. Watashi, Kiria, what do you do? You remember the chilling pursuit of the Teak-Teak, another urban horror. The Kukase Kana shares that sense of inescapable violent threat, but adds a layer of psychological torment with her impossible question. Historians still argue whether the 1970s panic surrounding the Kukase Kana was a manifestation of societal anxieties about female agency and changing beauty standards, a fear of urban violence, or simply a particularly potent example of mass hysteria fueled by juvenile storytelling. It's like how a viral internet challenge can suddenly grip a generation, but this one comes with potentially lethal consequences. A quirky, and perhaps life-saving, tidbit from some versions of the legend offers potential ways to confuse or distract the Kukase Kana. One popular method is to answer her question with an ambiguous response like "so" or "average." This apparently perplexes her, giving you a chance to escape. Another is to offer her hard candy, particularly traditional Japanese bekoame amber-colored candy, which she is said to like, or to shout pomade 3 times, as some versions of her origin story involve her disfigurement being caused by a jealous rival using pomade that contained acid. Good luck remembering your specific brand of folklore repellent when confronted by a scissor-wielding woman with a Chelsea grin. Hold on, terrifying lady. Is it amber candy or 3 shouts of Brill cream that gets me out of this? My notes are a bit smudged from the rain. The rain drips from the brim of her unseen hat, or perhaps from the edges of her surgical mask. Her eyes never leave yours. The seconds stretch into an eternity. The world around you seems to fade. The sound of the city, distant traffic, the rain itself, becoming muted. All that exists is you, her, and her terrifying question. This is not a spirit born of ancient sorrow like Okiku, or cosmic justice like the Gaki. The Kukase Kana feels more like a manifestation of random, brutal violence and psychological terror. Her origins are debated. Some stories trace her back to the Edo period, the samurai's unfaithful wife whose mouth was slit as punishment. Others suggest she was a victim of a botched medical procedure, or a woman driven mad by jealousy. Regardless of her specific backstory, her present form is a figure of pure menace. The drizzle of rain feels cold on your skin. You can almost smell the metallic tang of the scissors she might be hiding. Her presence is an immediate personal threat. There's no elaborate haunting, no slow buildup of dread. It's a direct, terrifying confrontation. The simplicity of her method, the question, the reveal, the violence, is what makes her so effective as an urban legend. She could be anyone, anywhere, hidden behind an ordinary mask, until she chooses her moment. The rain offers no comfort, no escape, only a bleak gray backdrop to a potentially fatal conversation. The chilling, unanswerable question of the Kukase Kana and the image of her horrifying, slit mouth begin to fade, though the unsettling feeling of a direct, personal threat lingers. The rain, which has been our constant companion through these tales of terror and sorrow, now seems to deepen, becoming a heavy, soaking downpour. You find yourself drawn towards a tradition that encapsulates the very act of sharing these scary stories, the Hakumenagari Kaidenkai, the gathering of 100 supernatural tales, which we touched upon briefly at the very beginning of our journey. Imagine yourself in a large, dimly lit room in an old Japanese house. The rain drums heavily on the roof and lashes against the paper shoji screens, which tremble with each gust of wind. In the center of the room, or perhaps arranged in a circle, are 100 candles, their flickering flames casting long, dancing shadows that writhe and twist on the walls like spectral entities. A group of people are gathered, their faces illuminated by the warm candlelight, yet also shadowed with anticipation and a touch of fear. One by one, each person tells a ghost story, a cadence. After each tale concludes, the single candle is extinguished, plunging the room incrementally further into darkness. This is not just a casual storytelling session. It's a ritual, a deliberate descent into the gloom, designed to heighten the senses and, according to belief, to thin the veil between the world of the living and the world of spirits. The atmosphere is thick with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The rain outside provides a constant, percussive soundtrack, amplifying the sense of isolation and enclosure. Each story told adds to the cumulative weight of fear and supernatural energy in the room. You can almost hear the hushed voices of the storytellers, their tones ranging from dramatic whispers to sudden, startling exclamations. They recount tales of eerie like the pale lady we first encountered, a vengeful onryo like Oiwa, of strange forest yokai like the Tengu, or perhaps even urban horrors like the Tik-Tik or the Kukusekana. With each extinguished candle, the remaining flames seem to burn brighter, more intensely, against the encroaching darkness. The shadows in the corners of the room deepen, becoming more suggestive, more menacing. The mainstream historical fact is that Hyakumonogatari Kaidankai became a popular parlor game, especially among samurai, during the Edo period. It was a test of courage, a form of entertainment, and a way to explore the rich tapestry of Japanese folklore. The game often involved a blue and paper-covered lamp to enhance the eerie atmosphere, and sometimes a mirror was placed in the room, perhaps to catch a glimpse of any supernatural entities that might be drawn by the stories. As the number of lit candles dwindles, 50, then 20, then 10, the tension in the room becomes almost unbearable. The storytellers' voices might grow softer, more hesitant, as if they are afraid of what they might be inviting. The rain outside seems to beat in time with the pounding hearts of the participants. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of the wind, every distant sound is magnified, interpreted as a potential sign, a response from the other side. You remember the way Hoichi the Earless performed for his spectral audience. Here, the living are actively trying to invoke that same kind of spectral attention. Historians still argue whether the true purpose of Hyakumonogatari Kaidankai was genuinely to summon spirits, or if it was more of a psychological exercise, a way to confront and explore fear in a controlled, communal setting similar to modern horror movie marathons. Or perhaps it was simply a thrilling way to pass a long, dark night, especially when entertainment options were more limited. Forget Netflix, lads. Let's try to summon an actual demon. Pass the snacks. A quirky and rather significant tidbit about the ritual is the belief surrounding the extinguishing of the final 100th candle. It is said that when the last candle is snuffed out, plunging the room into absolute darkness, a real ghost, yokai, or some other supernatural phenomenon will manifest. This is the ultimate climax of the gathering, the moment everyone both fears and, perhaps secretly, desires. Because of this, many groups would actually stop at 99 stories, unwilling to face the potential consequences of completing the full 100. It's like playing a game of supernatural chicken. The candles are few now. Only a handful remain, their flames casting a meager, flickering light. The faces of the participants are barely visible, their eyes wide in the gloom. The stories being told are perhaps the most frightening, saved for last. The rain hammers down, a relentless, almost angry assault on the house. The air is cold, charged with an unseen energy. You can almost feel the presence of all the spirits invoked by the night's tales, capcut counting her plates, the funerii reaching from the waves, the gaki whispering their hunger, all of them drawn closer by this ritual of remembrance and fear. Finally, only one candle remains. Its solitary flame gutters and dances, a tiny beacon against the overwhelming darkness. The last storyteller finishes their tale, their voice a strained whisper. A hush falls over the room, broken only by the storm and the ragged breathing of the participants. Who will be the one to extinguish the final light? What will happen when they do? The anticipation is a physical pressure, a weight on your chest. The flame is snuffed out. Utter blackness descends. The rain seems to roar. In that perfect darkness, every sense is heightened. Is that a cold breath on your neck? A whisper in the dark that wasn't one of the participants? A shape moving where no shape should be? The true horror of the Hyakimonogatari Kaidankai is not just in the stories themselves, but in that final, terrifying moment of a promise fulfilled, the darkness invited in, and the uncertainty of what, if anything, has come to join you in the rain-lashed night. The absolute, unnerving darkness of the Hyakimonogatari Kaidankai's final extinguished candle begins, ever so slowly, to lighten. Not with the harsh return of candlelight, but with the faintest pre-dawn gray that might be filtering through the shoji screens. Or perhaps it's just your mind seeking solace after so many unsettling encounters. The torrential rain, which roared with such fury as the last tale ended, now softens, its rhythm slowing, becoming a gentle, almost meditative patter. This is the moment of lingering fear, the quiet aftershocks of the night's spectral journey, as the rain offers its final, whispered accompaniment. You feel a profound sense of stillness, the kind that follows a long, intense storm. The air is cool and clean, washed by the downpour. Yet, beneath the surface calm, there's a residue of unease, a faint thrumming of the nerves. The stories you've witnessed, the sorrowful Yurei, the vengeful Onryo like Oiwa, the enigmatic Tengu in their misty forests, the chilling urban pursuit of the Tik-Tik Okiku's endless count by her lonely well, the grasping hands of the funerii, the spectral samurai within Himeji's walls, the uncanny transformation of the Bakaniko, the nightmare-consuming Baku, the eternally hungry Gaki, the mystery of Kamikakushi, the icy beauty of the Yukiana, the tragic artistry of Hoichi the Earless, the terrifying question of the Kukusei-kana, and the deliberate invocation of the Hyakimonogatari. They don't simply vanish with the imagined dawn. They linger. Each tale has left a subtle imprint on your psyche. A creaking floorboard in your own home might now carry a different resonance. A fleeting shadow in your peripheral vision might cause a moment's pause. The sight of a surgical mask, a mournful gust of wind, the deep shadows under an old tree, even the innocent meow of a cat, all these everyday things might now be tinged with a faint echo of the supernatural horrors you've explored. This is the nature of pervasive fear, the way these stories seep into the cracks of our perception. The mainstream historical fact is that folklore, ghost stories, and urban legends serve a vital societal function. They are not just entertainment. They are vehicles for cultural memory, for moral instruction, for expressing communal anxieties, and for exploring the boundary between the known and the unknown. The enduring power of Japanese ghost stories, specifically, lies in their deep connection to history, religious beliefs, Shinto and Buddhism, and the natural landscape, creating a uniquely rich and resonant tapestry of the uncanny. You reflect on the sheer variety of these Japanese spirits. Some, like Okiku or Hoichi, are born from specific, poignant human tragedies. Others, like the Tengu or the Yukiana, seem more like elemental forces, personifications of nature's wildness and power. Then there are those like the Tik-Tik or the Kukusei-kana, modern nightmares spawned from the anxieties of urban life. And some, like the Gaki, are manifestations of profound philosophical concepts. This diversity speaks to a culture that has long engaged with the idea of a world populated by more than just the living. Historians still argue whether the cyclical popularity of ghost stories and horror in general correlates with periods of societal stress and uncertainty, offering a cathartic outlet for collective fears, or if it's simply an enduring human fascination with the macabre and the mysterious, regardless of external circumstances. Perhaps it's that the world often feels chaotic and frightening, and stories of ghosts, by giving form to formless anxieties, offer a strange kind of comfort, a known monster rather than an unknown dread. A quirky and somewhat comforting tidbit in the broader context of Japanese supernatural beliefs is the prevalence of protective charms, omamori, and rituals designed to ward off evil spirits or bring good fortune. From small embroidered pouches sold at shrines and temples to specific purification rites, there's a whole framework of spiritual self-defense. So while the folklore is rich with terrifying entities, it's also rich with ways to navigate a world perceived to be full of them. It's like having a really good spectral insurance policy. Yes, there might be a vengeful ghost in my well, but I've got this handy little charm from the local shrine, so we should be mostly all right. Mostly, the rain has become a mere whisper now, a soft, shushing sound. The imagined room is growing lighter. The shadows are retreating, losing their menace, becoming just ordinary shadows once more. The fear, too, is receding like an outgoing tide, leaving behind a sense of quiet contemplation. What made these stories so chilling? Was it the threat of violence, the sorrow of the unresolved, the uncanniness of the familiar twisted into the strange? Or was it simply the power of suggestion, amplified by the intimate, shared experience of storytelling? Even one imagined like this? The lingering fear is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a reminder of the depth of human emotion, the power of belief, and the enduring mysteries that lie just beyond the veil of our everyday perception. It's a whisper that says the world is a little stranger, a little more magical, and perhaps a little more dangerous than we sometimes like to think. And as the last drops of our imaginary rain fall, there's a sense of having passed through something, a journey through the night that leaves you, perhaps, a little more awake to the unseen. The rain has almost stopped now. Only a few stray drops patter softly, like the final fading notes of a long, intricate song. The journey through these shadowed corners of Japanese folklore, through tales of sorrow, vengeance, and unsettling mystery, is drawing to its close. You can feel the last vestiges of the night's chill receding, replaced by a quiet calm. The fearsome figures, the mournful Yurei, the enraged Onryo, the strange yokai, and the terrifying urban legends begin to soften, their sharp edges blurring as they retreat back into the mists of imagination from whence they came. The oppressive darkness of the deep forest, the chilling expanse of the stormy sea, the haunted corridors of ancient castles, and the menacing streets of the city all gently dissolve. What remains is the quiet stillness of your own space, the familiar comfort of your surroundings. The stories, though, might leave a faint echo, a subtle shift in the way you perceive the quiet hours, the sigh of the wind, or the shadows that dance at the edge of your vision. But these echoes are not meant to terrify, not anymore. They are simply whispers, reminders of the vast, unseen worlds that human imagination has explored for centuries. As the last imaginary raindrop falls, and the softest of silences settles around you, allow your mind to grow quiet. Let the lingering images fade into a peaceful emptiness. The night has offered its share of unsettling tales, but now it offers rest. There are no more ghosts to encounter, no more curses to fear, only the gentle embrace of approaching sleep. The journey is complete. The shadows have passed. Breathe deeply and let go to the life of human beings, but why are they so unlucky? Dying in the corner of the room all their lives. No one loves them. The cold box dies alone. Then the sound of sobbing and sobbing blend with a quiet night. Thank you, dear listeners, for your attention. Goodbye, and see you again in the next stories.